This is a very short post on the Bose Acoustimass 10 speakers. We bought these in late '98 from Best Buy. We had a big screen TV down here at the time. This is in the basement. And there was 5 of these little cubes and then a module sort of echo chamber, not echo chamber, but it's acoustic subwoofer. And the signal would go from your receiver into that and then into these. And we had 5 of them. 3 in the front, 2 in the back, and we mounted them up like this, and we had to buy these little brackets separate. And the only notable thing about, they sounded pretty good. We tried to angle them down as best we could. When this house was built, we anticipated doing that. This was about 3 years before we bought these and were installing them. But the cable behind this, one of them, this one I think, we couldn't figure out that behind the wall, we'd forgotten that when everything was being installed, my dad was doing that, separate from the folks building the house. And he just tied it off physically, not spliced the two sets together, because he ran out of cable or something at some point, and he figured I'll deal with that later. And he forgot. Fortunately, we still had access to that part. But when we first installed these and hooked them up, the one speaker wasn't working. It was driving us nuts. We were testing it. We didn't have a Laserdisc or DVD yet. We were testing it with a VHS pre-recorded tape with Dolby Pro Logic of Wayne's World that we got free at McDonald's at some point. It was really the only store-bought tape we had that we knew had Dolby Pro Logic encoding. So eventually we went behind the wall, quickly spliced it together, and it worked fine for years. And we eventually got DVD, and I even got a Laserdisc player, the Pioneer. I want to say, I can't remember the model number, but it's the one that had AC3 output, which we now call Dolby Digital 5.1. It was one of the last ones made. And this was a new old stock one I got in 2002 at a store near Times Square in New York City that was, again, losing its lease like they always are and stuff. Usually kind of shady, but I figured, you know what, for 200 bucks, new in the box, I can take a chance. I remember I grabbed it, I hauled this thing into a cab, and I raced to Penn Station to get the train back because I had to leave town. And so I had that thing under my arm. So the box was a little beat up when I got home, but the thing worked fabulously. And it even had the separate tray for a CD. I wish I could remember the model number, but it's pretty easy to find online. After that, I think they made one more model. This wasn't an Elite, but it might as well have been. But after that, they made one more Laserdisc model, which had DVD capability, and there was something with the encoding because it was an early DVD encoding. And some movies had a real pink or purple hue to them. I remember David Letterman went on and on talking about Lawrence of Arabia one night, having that issue on his DVD player. He said he didn't say DVD/Laserdisc, but I have to assume that's what he had, because at one point in the late '80s he had Siskel and Ebert on, and they were talking about new technologies, and they were pushing him. You've got to get a Laserdisc player, and he confused it with the CED, the RCA CED disc, because he had worked for NBC and he knew of that when it was being introduced and eventually killed. So he had gotten one of those and commented how awful it was at the time in the 80s. I remember that. Then later, Siskel and Ebert telling him to get a Laserdisc, he says, no thanks, because I had a bad experience. They told him that's not the same thing. And then eventually he got the Laserdisc player similar to the one I had, which was piped right through these. And the only other notable thing, my dentist, when I worked at Best Buy, wanted to get, his son wanted some of these. I said, well, I'll get them for you at my discount. So I did. I brought him over, and it happened to be white. We opened the box. It's like, oh, I wanted black. I said, oh, okay, I'll return them. Not thinking that that would be a problem, and I forget why I didn't return them, or I couldn't, or I forgot. And so for about 8 more years, I had this brand new in the box set of these, but in white. And my brother even said, oh, Dad wanted ours in white originally. They didn't have them. I was going to swap them out, and I never got around to it, and eventually I sold those new in the box ones. And these now sit here unused currently, because I'm not into surround sound. I watch old movies that are mono at best. What am I going to do with 5 speakers? Our big new fancy HD television, which took over from the old projection set, came with one of those home theaters in a box, which sounds a little better than TV speakers. And again, what are we watching? News, old sitcoms. Okay, there's not the newest thing that anyone watches in this house is Big Bang Theory, and there's not a whole lot of surround sound to be had from that. So these served us well, but they're still mounted here, and maybe someday we'll fire them up again for something. Maybe quadraphonic sound, since I've got a quadraphonic reel deck, as you have probably seen in my other posts.